Before I became a rabbi, I worked in managed healthcare. I started in marketing, and then I got promoted into operations, and it was pretty heady stuff for a 20-something. I was really proud of the work that I was doing. And one Friday afternoon, my boss showed up at my office door and casually asked if I could join her in her office in a few minutes. Okay. Upon arriving there, I discovered that the VP of Human Resources was sitting in the other visitor's chair. Uh-oh. That's not good. They got to the point quickly. My job was being eliminated. That was the bad news. The good news, they had another job for me at the same pay, with the same benefits, in a different department. I held it together for the remaining hour of the day and then started crying on my way home. And I didn't really stop crying until it was time to make the commute back. I cried off and on for the entire weekend. I was crushed. Yes, I still had a job, and for that I was grateful. I was financially dependent on that job, and at the same time, it was wildly painful to discover that the role was not needed any longer, and that the projects that I was working on were going to be scrapped. It was demoralizing to learn that something I had prided myself on doing could be discontinued so suddenly and with so little warning. Was my work really that meaningless? The silver lining in this dark cloud was that it provided me the impetus to make a major change in my life. When people ask, where did you get the courage to leave your existing career to go become a rabbi? That experience figured into it. When I looked at what I wanted out of life, I knew that at least part of that answer was not that. But what happens when it's your dream job? Or worse, what happens when you've devoted your life to some aspect of increasing the common good, and suddenly you discover there's no agreement on what good is? What happens when you fall down the rabbit hole like Alice in Wonderland, and suddenly everything is changed? In the listening circles for federal employees, we heard about their sense of dislocation because of the work of Project 2025 and DOGE. It's not just the threat of job loss. It's not just mourning all the talent that has left. It's also the disagreement over basic principles, as if the whole government was reflected in a funhouse mirror. It's stuff like refusing to let people refer to organizations with climate change in their title, even in the footnotes, even when it's needed for accuracy, to account for the origins of the data because of a pre-existing dislike of the phrase climate change. It's also actions like firing people under false pretenses and then accusing them baselessly of misdeeds because the numbers weren't what the leader wanted to hear. Moral coherence is the idea that what you do makes sense in the world, that you can take actions that are good and helpful and meaningful, and that these actions will matter. We know, because they've told us, that one of the goals of Project 2025 and DOGE has been to demoralize the federal government and the workers there by creating a hostile work environment. It's an intentional destruction of the sense of moral coherence. The philosopher John Rawls defines liberal constitutional democracies as follows. They are both reasonable and rational. And their rational conduct, as organized and expressed in their elections and their votes, the laws and the policies of their government, is similarly constrained by their sense of what is reasonable. In other words, to be a modern liberal constitutional democracy is to aspire to be reasonable, well-ordered, and just. That's what we as the United States of America have aspired to be in the past, even though we fell short. I mean, we've never completely achieved that, but that's what we wanted to be. And that's not what's happening in our federal government right now. Can our Jewish tradition be helpful to us in this moment? In John Rawls' structure, traditional Judaism would qualify as an example of a decent hierarchy. Jewish law is concerned with enacting human rights, broadly speaking, but those rights are specifically distributed according to a hierarchy. Some people are more equal than others. It would be better, of course, if they were distributed equally. In modern Jewish liberal thought, such as what we find in Reform Judaism, we take that traditional structure one step further with the intent to create what Rawls would call a reasonable liberal people. By this we mean not only do we follow the rule of law and observe human rights, but also we value equity and equality. But we do look to our tradition for how to frame our response when we're not sure how to proceed. Not surprisingly, Jewish law worries a lot about whose claims you should believe. Here's an example of how that kind of deliberation often unfolds. The Talmud relates the story of a certain man who is said to those present at his deathbed, "My property should go to Tovia." And the man passed away, and Tovia came to claim his possessions. And Rabbi Yochanan said, "The Tovia we were looking for has come, and there is no need to be concerned that the deceased might have meant a different Tovia." In other words, when there's no dispute, when there's a common sense answer in front of you, it's fine to go with that. You don't need to delve further. Okay, it's going to get more complicated. The Talmud adds, if the deceased had said, "My property shall go to Tovia," and Rabbi Tovia shows up, it's assumed that this is not the person that he meant, for he said, "My property should go to Tovia." He did not say, "My property should go to Rabbi Tovia." But they're not done yet. If Rabbi Tovia is a person who is familiar with the deceased, meaning that they were good friends, then it could be assumed that the deceased called him by his personal name and not by his title because he was familiar with him. So as you can see, even in the ancient world, some people called the rabbi by their first name. Yes. But it was much more common to use the title as well. What we learn here is when there's no dispute, but it's not clear how the information should be used, you should use your powers of deduction and then decide how to proceed. Okay, they're not done. If two men named Tovia came forward, and one of them was the deceased neighbor, and the other was a Torah scholar, then what? The Torah scholar takes precedence. I know, you didn't expect that. Similarly, if one was a relative and the other was a Torah scholar, the Torah scholar takes precedence. It may surprise you because you think that proximity should matter, right? Because we just established that he was going around calling Tovia by his first name because he knew him well. What happens is when there's a dispute, go with the person with greater authority and learning. Go with the expert. Even if the other one happens to have an inside connection or an anecdote to prove otherwise. You should respect scholarship and expertise in forming your opinions according to the Talmud rather than anecdotal evidence from someone who claims to have direct knowledge. Or to put it other way, if your physician says, "Get this vaccine," and someone who is not a physician, speaking theoretically, says, "Do not get this vaccine," you should listen to your physician and get the vaccine. The text continues. If they were both relatives or both neighbors or both scholars, so they're equal, there's no systematic way of determining who is entitled to the property, and the decision is left to the discretion of the judges. When there's a dispute and both sides present their case with equal authority, then you're going to have to dig into the case and think through what is true and accept that discretion is going to be part of the decision. When this happens, you should be less sure about the situation because it's not obvious who is right. Note also that the matter is ultimately given to experts, the judges, to decide. So what had been in place regarding vaccine recommendations, for example, was a collection of experts who made these decisions to make sure that individual interests did not subvert the common good. We can, from a Jewish point of view, be appalled that the neutral judges were replaced by individuals with weaker credentials and stronger ideologies. We can, using Talmudic logic, suggest that the judges of such decisions need to have genuine expertise. What's appealing about this Talmudic text, and by extension, what's appealing about our Jewish legal tradition, is its sense of moral coherence. Disputes can be managed. The rule of law takes hold. Each side presents its case and gets decided based on its merits. The viewpoint may feel naive in this new era of might makes right, but it's the very foundation of being a just people. Our tradition demands it. What do we do then when reasonableness is under attack and when this idea of a shared common good has frayed? How do we face this situation with endurance and resilience? In her research-based work, Shatterproof, How to Live in a World of Constant Chaos, not hard to see why I thought this would be a good book to read this year, Shatterproof, How to Live in a World of Constant Chaos, Tasha Eurich identifies 3 things that we need to thrive amidst this kind of chaos. She says it's confidence, choice, and connection. By confidence, Eurich means the belief we're effective in our actions, capable of achieving our goals, and able to grow and learn new things. If your work is a source of chaos in your life, it is possible to develop confidence from activities outside of your work. Remember how during the pandemic, we all learned how to bake sourdough? Yeah, that was an example of building confidence to increase resilience. There was a reason we did that. Do that or some version of that. Learn how to play tennis or to embroider or take up singing. We're all going to need deep resilience to resist this ongoing degradation of our national discourse. You can help by building your confidence. Similarly, by choice, Eurich means feeling free to function without pressure or threat, acting with agency and integrity, and staying true to ourselves. That's what's missing in government jobs right now. Many of our federal employees are reporting feeling a sense of pressure and threat. But as with the case of confidence, a sense of choice need not occur in the career space to be helpful for building our sense of resilience. As Eurich explains, whether it's through selecting a fulfilling career, ideally, leaving a toxic relationship, or advocating for a meaningful cause. Choice helps us feel authentic, aware, and aligned, as well as purposeful, empowered, and engaged. Okay, so here's one little caveat, and this is my own. Not all forms of choice are good choices. Doom scrolling on your phone activates a feeling of choice because you are the sovereign lord of that space, right? If you're spending too much time scrolling on your phone as a coping mechanism amidst our national chaos, that could be a sign that you need to expand the range of choice in your life. You might not yet be in a place to make that change, as this moment is indeed difficult, so be gentle with yourself. But just knowing that your doom scrolling might be enough of an impetus by itself to break the cycle, to say, I need to have more choices, more areas where I feel like I am sovereign. Eurich also points to the need for connection, which he names the sense that we belong, get along with others, and experience mutual closeness and support. Pets can help. That's why there were so many pet adoptions during the pandemic. I would be remiss, of course, if I did not mention here, just theoretically speaking, involvement in Temple Micah is a great source of connection. We're here as your community to support you. Volunteering, for example, at Micah can tap into all 3 sources of resilience all at once. I recommend it. I'd also suggest, in addition to your trio of confidence, choice, and connection, a fourth strategy, and that is prayer. I am aware there are politicians out there who will offer thoughts and prayers in place of engaging in action and legislation, and that's not what I mean here. We should not retreat into navel-gazing spirituality. Rather, as Abraham Joshua Heschel argues, Jewish prayer is intended to be the first step in enacting the visions of the prophets. Prayer implies action. We're expected to heed the prophet Micah's admonition to do justice, love goodness, walk humbly with our God. Prayer is what allows us to identify what it means to do justice and to love goodness and to walk humbly with our God. But why prayer exactly? You might say, couldn't we just move on to the action part without the need for the prayer? Couldn't we skip that part? Okay, yeah, there's a reason why 12-step programs related to addiction ask you to envision a higher power. There's a reason they do that. At moments when you are feeling lost and helpless, it is life-affirming to recognize that there's a power in charge of the universe. Right is right, wrong is wrong, and no amount of cynicism or nihilism is going to undo all of that. The moments when you are finding it hardest to pray, the hardest to believe in God, may be the moments you most need to pray. Let me give you a personal example. The year that I divorced the father of my child, in my 4th year of rabbinical school, I felt really lost. And that year, I made the decision to attend every worship service in the school's chapel that was available to me, even though I just wasn't feeling it. It was feeling estranged from God, even as I was studying to be a rabbi. It's a weird experience. Sitting in the chapel at services felt like an extravagant waste of time, and at the same time, like the very life raft that was keeping me afloat. I never forgot that experience, and I learned a lot from it. Our tradition has long said that the prayer of the brokenhearted is the one that's likely to be heeded and heard. The muscle memory of praying while in distress makes it easier to find solace when things look awful. It offered me then what I needed most, a structure for admitting that I was not in charge here, and a reminder that things could happen that were out of my control. But even so, a reassurance that there was still such thing as moral coherence in the universe. It's helping me now to counteract that ever-present desire to doom scroll and fall into despair. Prayer is a source of hope. To our federal employees, we see you. We support you, and we believe you. What you have been doing in the course of your work has been both necessary and good. Thank you. It's going to be a long trek back to the place of reasonableness, and we're going to need to cultivate a lot of resilience to get there. But we can do this together. May we together enact our vision for a better world. Shana Tova.